All right. So, Elon, friend of show, Elon Musk,
Correct.
is in a bit of a battle here with the Brazilian government or with one particular member of the government, one of the Supreme Court justices there. And they have suspended X. Brazil's Supreme Court on Friday ordered a nationwide suspension of Elon Musk's social network X after the company vowed to defy earlier court orders concerning content moderation and the appointment of a legal representative in the country. Alexandre de Moraes, the court's top judge, has also ordered daily fines for people or businesses in Brazil that use VPNs, virtual private networks, or other methods to access X while the site is banned in the country, G1 Global reported. The court issued a statement via its government website in Brazil on Friday saying that it had ordered, quote, the immediate and complete suspension of the operation of X, formerly Twitter, throughout the national territory until the court's judicial decisions are complied with and the fines applied are paid, unquote. The statement also said that the order will be valid until a representative of the company in the country is appointed. Hours later, the court issued a second order suspending some of the measures in its first 51-page order against X. Initially, de Moraes gave companies like Apple and Google 5 days to stop offering X downloads in their app stores and to stop making VPN apps available to access X. The second order eliminated that deadline and put off implementation of these measures until further notice, giving time for X to pay fines and put a legal representative in place. Brazil's Supreme Court announced on Wednesday that Musk and X had 24 hours to either appoint a legal representative for its business there or face a penalty of suspension of activities nationwide. The deadline passed Thursday evening. X's global government affairs unit said in a statement late Thursday that it was expecting the De Moraes shutdown soon because the company would not comply with his orders. Brazil, a major non NATO ally of the US, is now preparing for October municipal elections. Under Brazil's laws, social media companies operating in the country must employ someone to handle government takedown notices, including those regarding political misinformation and incitements to violence. X has no such representative in Brazil, and it said earlier this month that it would remove all its employees from the country rather than face any possible arrests over noncompliance with court orders. A suspension of X in Brazil could cause business problems for Musk's already embattled company. Brazil has a population of more than 171 million active social media users, according to market research by USGA. Musk led the $44 billion acquisition of Twitter in late 2022. He implemented sweeping changes and reinstated previously banned and suspended accounts, leading many major advertisers to flee or cut spending on ad campaigns. The World Bank stopped paying for campaigns on X after a CBS News investigation found ads from the organization appeared under a racist post from an X account that regularly posted, quote, pro Nazi and white nationalist content. What was that? The WEF? It was posted
Yeah.
under the WEF. Musk lashed out at De Moraes in a series of posts after the court had frozen the finances of Starlink, the satellite internet service provided by Musk's SpaceX in Brazil. Starlink has advertised on X under Musk's management, and Musk has encouraged people in Brazil to use Starlink to access the social media platform. De Moraes' court had fined X for alleged violations of Brazilian law and froze Starlink finances in the country to ensure those fines are paid. Critics of De Moraes view his court's orders against X as an overreach. His court has a history of suspending social media apps until they comply with regulations in the country. Meta-owned WhatsApp and Telegram have both been suspended in Brazil but reinstated, for example. On Friday, Musk compared de Moraes to movie villain Voldemort and shared a post describing the evil tyranny of Moraes. Representatives for X and for the U.S. Embassy in Brazil weren't immediately available to comment. Musk has repeatedly denounced de Moraes' court orders as censorship. In its Thursday statement, X said de Moraes' court had taken illegal actions against the company. On Friday, after news of the suspension, Musk said on X, the oppressive regime in Brazil is so afraid of the people learning the truth that they will bankrupt anyone who tries. So Elon, through X, has been throwing a lot at T. Marias. Here's one of his less serious tweets on August 29th. Grok, generate an image as if Voldemort and a Sith Lord had a baby and he became a judge in Brazil. It's uncanny. Now, the funny thing is the outfit, that's not actually AI. He actually does wear that outfit.
Yeah, his actual, yeah.
That's his actual judge's robes. Only the lightsabers are added. So now they have started to drop files on this judge, basically in an attempt to wage a kind of PR war against him. So here's Elon again. This is on the 31st, yesterday. There is growing evidence that fake judge Alexandre engaged in serious, repeated, and deliberate election interference in Brazil's last presidential election. Under Brazilian law, that would mean up to 20 years in prison. And I'm sorry to say that it appears that some former Twitter employees were complicit in helping him do so. Anyone with examples or evidence to this effect, please reply to this post. So now, this is today, they started dumping these files on X. Today, we launched the daily data dump on the crimes under Brazilian law that fake judge Alexandre has committed. He can block this platform in Brazil, but he can't stop the whole world from knowing his illegal, shameful, and hypocritical deeds. Karma's a bitch, bro. So this is the Alexandre files. Now, Michael Schellenberger, he was actually one of the authors on the Brazil version of the Twitter files. So he's been on this beat for a while. So here he retweets the files saying, this is insane. The Brazilian dictator, Alexandre, demanded that X secretly block a sitting federal senator without any explanation for why. He gave X 2 hours to comply. This is a direct violation of Brazil's constitution and election interference. So here is the first thing they've dropped, showing what they were told to do. So according to X, the order, well, they say this is the actual order they got.
Right.
X must block within 2 hours and in secret the following accounts, including that of a sitting Brazilian senator in their entirety, without any reference to a single illegal post from any of the accounts. So these are the accounts they were told to ban. And then they got a reference here to Brazilian law, including Article 5. All persons are equal under the law without any distinction whatsoever, Brazilians and foreigners residing in the country being ensured of inviolability of the right to life, to liberty, to equality, to security, and to property on the following terms. The expression of thought is free and anonymity is forbidden. The expression of intellectual, artistic, scientific, and communications activities is free, independently of censorship or license. Paragraph 2, any and all censorship of a political, ideological, and artistic nature is forbidden. Okay, so similar to our First Amendment, really, if you look at the terms there. We should have Glenn on. I'm sure he could explain that to us better. But Michael went on and he did a video here explaining some of what's going on here. So we're just going to play a little section here to really look at how this ties back to the United States And what is so dangerous about Kamala Harris and the forces that she represents?
Same time, the Biden administration and Democrats have played an influential role in instigating the censorship in Brazil. The FBI went to Brazil and gave its Supreme Court justices advice on how to censor its population. The US government has been funding many of the NGOs in Brazil that have been demanding censorship since the election of a populist president there in 2018. And when I testified before Congress in May of this year, the Democrats on the committee and their witness all defended Brazil's censorship. And Pacheco yesterday affirmed his support for Moraes. The U.S. government, after the election of the populist President Jair Bolsonaro in 2018, funded these pro-censorship organizations which have been demanding censorship. Moraes yesterday openly defended censorship to prevent extremist populist groups from coming to power. As United States Federal Communications Commissioner Brendan Carr noted yesterday, that's a direct violation of the Brazilian Constitution, which explicitly protects political speech. As such, the totalitarian takeover of Brazil is a model for what the Democrats and the legacy news media want for the whole world. Pro-censorship scholars at Stanford and Harvard, Democrats in Congress, and the U.S. news media have long recognized that the First Amendment is an obstacle to their plans. And so they have supported censorship efforts by nations around the world with weaker free speech protections, like Brazil, Britain, Australia, and the European Union. They're looking for them to censor and even block X. We need to grow our global free speech movement.
Okay, so this is the alarm that Schellenberger has been raising for a while. That what the intelligence services are trying to do is pressure countries with weaker free speech laws without a First Amendment to pass these draconian acts so that these tech platforms will ultimately change their protocols in ways that impact the United States. And as we'll see tonight, these efforts are not limited to that. We are seeing an increasing amount of harassment of journalists, particularly in the UK. But we've seen the CEO of Telegraph charged in France. And we've seen this happening now in the United States. Legit friend of show, Danny Shaw, just got rousted at the airport. So we are seeing this real kind of fascist, rainbow fascism coming from the liberal side. And that is inevitable. When you look at the language of neoliberalism, of the liberal class, it is a language of people who see themselves as the moral betters of their political opponents. Now, ultimately, if you believe that you are fundamentally, morally superior to your opponents, well, censorship is not only desirable, it's inevitable. It's inevitable because you do not feel that they have a legitimate right to speak. You fundamentally don't believe they have a right to speak. And if you look at what's been going on, particularly since 2016, it is the entire liberal establishment trying to find ways to claim that they believe in freedom of speech while justifying censorship. They've really spent the last 8 years in their rhetorically and increasingly fundamentally in their actions and through the use of the tools of the state and through pressure on these tech platforms, they are making actionable their fundamental belief that they are the rightful masters of society, of mores, of culture, of law, and that their political opponents are not just wrong, they're dangerous enemies of the state who must be dealt with by any means necessary.
Well, I would say also that, and just, I mean, Schellenberger referenced this there, but that's true. That is in the court document, a fear that social media will give rise to extremist populist groups and unbalance election results. So it is very, very obvious that this is an attempt to steer public opinion away from the quote unquote populist candidates or populist movements and funnel all discourse in a direction within a certain Overton window. Very, very similar to the liberal class here, as Russell mentioned. The branding that is just so fundamental to liberal politics is that you are, if you support us, virtuous. You are good.
Yes.
The
Yes.
opponents are bad. That alone creates a sort of icing on the censorship cake. If Trump is president, is Danny Shaw still going to get shaken down at the airport? Yes, I think so. Right? But you're not going to have this because conservatives don't have that sort of moral superiority and moral virtue as such a core part
Right.
of their branding. That's not to say there's not a culture war waged on that side. But as we're going to see in our next piece about Robert Reich, the idea that you have the inside knowledge, you are the privileged class in society, that is the enlightened class, that makes them more inclined to do more censorship online because discourse itself offends them if they cannot contain it. And on the right, there is not that obsession with containing discourse. Now, ultimately, fascism, as defined by our friend Tusker and as echoed brilliantly, in my opinion, by Caleb Maupin when you guys interviewed him, is capitalism's response to a social crisis. The only way that capitalism can respond to a social crisis is by suppressing that agitation.
Right.
And that will take the form of censorship, which is why, yes, Donald Trump will do it too. They're just not going to do it as broadly and in this context because shit posting on Twitter doesn't violate the sort of core brand proposition of right-wing politics the way it does neoliberal left-wing politics. So that's why they are especially dangerous in this context, and this is done with the specific intent of containing discourse as stated by this judge. That's what's so outrageous about it. He's not being shy about this whatsoever. Not at all.
Right. And that is clearly what they want here. And this is why we're really, in terms of free speech, this is why we're really trapped between the Scylla and Charybdis with Trump and Harris. If we just narrow it down to this one issue, you've had NYU just revise its guidelines to define anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. And clearly things are going to continue in that direction under the Democrats, as well as under Donald Trump. I don't know that it will really be worse. It's I posted a meme that got a lot of attention on X. It didn't originate with me; it was somebody else's. But about how don't tell me I have to vote for Harris because things are going to be worse for Palestinians under Trump. You can't really be worse than genocide.
Right.
Somebody commented there, what is he going to do? Dig up the bodies and kill them again? And that is a very valid point. I kind of feel the same way in this area, but with Biden as president, Danny Shaw is getting rousted at the airport. So how much worse is it going to be under Donald Trump than what they're doing? NYU is a liberal institution, right? A liberal institution. Really, the concern is in this one area where they overlap. In terms of speech, as you say, more broadly, sure, Donald Trump would be better more broadly. You'd have a president who would be saying, this is a terrible thing what they're doing in Brazil. Why are they doing this to my friend Elon? He's done so much for the world.
Yeah, exactly.
They're treating him so terribly. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
It's very unfair. Very unfair.
But look and understand, they won't comply with having a representative in the country because they're afraid the representative will get arrested, which is right. Particularly after what just happened in France. It's a very valid fear.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Please clap.